Don't tell that Kenny G one, though.
What Kenny G?
Somebody told it last week.
I don't have a Kenny G joke. I don't talk about Kenny G. I'm not a fan. Yeah, nice guy, good golfer, but take me out of the elevator, man. I mean, this is a quick story about Kenny. This is the truth. This is a true story. This is not a joke. This is true. There was one year, David Sanborn, tenor player. Michael Brecker, the late Michael Brecker, great and good friend, and he passed just recently. Incredible tenor player. They were at a function, and everybody was playing their instruments. And as a matter of fact, Pat, what's his name? Told me Pat Metheny told me this story. He says they were backstage, and Kenny G walks up with his horn, and there are the three of them hanging, and Kenny G says, "Wow, look at this." Looking at the two of them, he said, "I feel like the luckiest guy in the world." And if you know Michael Brecker, one of the most kindest, sweetest, most unassuming guy, opens his mouth and said, "You are the luckiest." God bless him, you know, I mean.
Hey. Hello and welcome to Joe Seeley's Duets, live from the Visit Florida Performance Space. I'm Joe Seeley. My guest today is a multi-dimensional artist who is a fine songwriter, a distinctive guitarist, and a marvelous singer with an international legion of fans. His songs have been covered by such artists as Peggy Lee, Carmen McRae, and Mel Torme. With great pleasure, I welcome Kenny Rankin. Hello, Kenny. Now, you were born in the Washington Heights area of New York City. How did that influence you to become a musician?
Well, it's a very urban neighborhood. For example, there was a lot of Dominican people there, Cubans. My first wife was Puerto Rican, and it's a very urban neighborhood. My first instrument was conga, but I used to listen to a lot of classical music. My parents didn't want me to listen to, I don't know if anybody remembers the name Moondog, or even rock and roll. So I put on classical music at night, and I went to sleep with that, and that stayed on pretty all night. I think that's where I got my education. It's a long answer, but that's the answer.
No, it's a good answer, and long answers are perfectly fine. We've got an hour to fill. I understand you were sort of discovered by one of your school teachers. Was that it?
Well,
was that your first encouragement?
I don't know if I was discovered, but when I was 8 years old, I was in 7 or 8, I was in the 4th grade, and I was singing O Holy Night in the Christmas play, and I finished it, and my 4th grade teacher, Isabel Kringle, came over, patted me on the head, and said, "Kenneth, that was lovely." And I said to myself, I want to get some more of this. And that's when homework became, a foreign language. And I never did homework again, which might say something about the educational system, because I got as far as the 2nd year of high school without ever doing homework.
That's incredible.
That's disgusting.
It's disgusting too.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
And so we find our education system, at least south of the border, in the pit that it is.
Did you have formal music education, or it was just a matter of learning?
So I don't read music. I did taught myself how to play the guitar, and I've always been singing, so I never took a lesson. But I discovered the guitar. I'll tell you how I wound up with the guitar. I picked up the guitar when I was 22. I was in Las Vegas. I was singing background for Teddy Randazzo in his Twist group in the lounge at the Thunderbird Hotel. And well, when you have a son coming on the way, you do what you have to do. So there I was, and then Don Costa, who was Teddy's good friend, they lived together up in Nyack, near, neighbors in Nyack, New York. He was out there at the Landmark Hotel writing some arrangements for either Mr. Sinatra or Mr. Mathis. And I was over there hanging out with Don because I used to love to watch him listen. Of all the arrangers that I ever worked with, he was a guy that really knew how to listen. That's why he was so great with Sinatra, and any vocalist for that, because he knew how to stay out of the way. Because the whole idea of the song, for me, is the story. It's the lyric. It's what is it about it that doesn't hit you. And so a fellow came up from Brazil who was recording by the great João Gilberto. And because I came from such a Latin neighborhood, and I was, Machito, Tito Puente, Cal Jada, all those people were a strong influence on the Latin side of life. I heard this music, and it was by João Gilberto. I quit the band. I walked across the street a few days later, bought a $50 guitar, a Peter, Paul, and Mary songbook, and bam, I'm a Jazz FM 98.
You said it first. As a teenager, you were signed to Decca Records, and a few years later, you were signed with Columbia, where you found yourself playing guitar on Bob Dylan's landmark album, Bringing It All Back Home. What was that experience like?
It was, well, Bob is Bob. The experience for me was an opportunity to get my union card as a musician. I was recording there with Bob Mercy, he was producing, and he was also producing Andy Williams, and he took me along. And I was at the water cooler with a great friend, Tom Wilson, the producer, and we were just hanging out. And he said, "What do you think about Dylan playing electric guitar on his next album?" I said, "What? What's that about?" He said, "Well, yeah, he's going to go electric. You want to play on the date?" I said, "Man, I just started playing guitar. I don't know too many chords, but then again, Dylan only knows 2 or 3 anyway. So what does it pay?" He said, "Well, it's like $57 an hour or a song, whichever is greater." I said, "I'm there." So there I was.
Wow, sounds like a marriage made in heaven.
It was great.
He knew 3 chords, you knew 4.
Yeah. But it was just rhythm, like the, "I ain't gonna work on make it fun no more," But on a Telecaster, I played a Telecaster once for $57 an hour.